Let me see here.
Man, these questions probably have me sweating more than anything else. You know, the quant section might not be as important as other components of the overall application itself. So it's hard to really say.
All right, thank you for joining us on our podcast today. For those who are new here, I am Pejman Pormoezi. I'm a co-founder at Magoosh. We are an edtech company that levels the playing field by providing high quality, affordable test prep and admission support. GradTalk MBA is all about demystifying the MBA application process for our listeners. I have an MBA from Haas Berkeley. This was well over a decade ago. So I have some first-hand experience, but it's been a while since I've been there. So I'm really excited to have an expert here in Eddie Asbie, Executive Director of Admissions at Cornell, to talk through all things MBA. Welcome to Grad Talk, Eddie. Maybe we could kick it off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and your role, how you kind of got into the industry, and maybe what you love most about your job.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to share more about my story as well as our program here at Johnson at Cornell University. But as mentioned, my name is Eddie Asbie. I am the Executive Director of Admissions and Scholarship for our 2-year residential program here at Johnson at Cornell University. I have been with Johnson approaching 11 years right now. I've been in higher ed for the last 17 plus years. And primarily most of my experience has been in the field of admissions. When I think about kind of like my path and, you know, how I got to admissions in particular, I had a lot of help, a lot of guidance as I went through the application process and through my educational journey. And I was always looking at finding a way of giving back, and no other better way of doing that through education and, of course, throughout the admissions process. So I've really just been fortunate enough to be able to, you know, work with some amazing candidates. Of course, thinking about my students, our community as well. What I love a lot about the work that we do is really being able to see a candidate go through the various stages of the process. So someone who's just thinking about an MBA to maybe attending one of our events, to applying, to getting admitted, and then, of course, seeing their journey 2 years in the program and beyond has been really rewarding for me. So I can talk and go on and on about what I love most about admissions, but you know, ultimately, always excited about someone furthering the education, and you know, no other better way of doing that than you know, getting an MBA from Cornell, let's say.
Yeah, you know, we hear student stories too at Magoosh all the time, and I'm with you that there's so many inspiring kind of paths that people take and journeys that folks are on. So a very cool space to be in, to be able to participate and be part of that journey. So kind of turning to Cornell Johnson in particular and learning more about the program, I'll kind of kick it off with you know, the key question that folks always like to talk about, which is kind of what stands out about your program. How would you describe Cornell Johnson to someone applying to business schools, and in terms of what really stands out about the experience there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when I think about what stands out in our program, what sets us apart, some of the things that come to mind, of course, is our community, of course, our curriculum, and, you know, of course, able to elaborate further on that. But let's start with our community and even just our location. I think that is really important for candidates to have a really good understanding of what type of environment are you looking for. Is it a smaller college town? Is it a larger metropolitan city? Is it a larger class size? Et cetera. And I think with our program, just our location, I think is what I always say is a hidden gem. I think it is an amazing college town of course, being the largest of the Ivies out there, it's an amazing college town with so much to offer. So if you're looking for an environment that one is a great place to bring families, your partner's significant others as well, but also right on the lake, right in wine country here in New York State, and also a true sense of community, where not only is it the Cornell community really collaborating with the Ithaca community, but vice versa. When I think about kind of more the ins and outs of just the program itself, I think our program gives you the opportunity to really customize your program the way that you see best fit. And whether it is, of course, going through, the program, and I think it's pretty standard, like any other program, that first semester going through your core courses. But in the spring semester of your first year is what we consider our immersion learning program, which allows our students to really immerse themselves into their particular career path. And there's various immersions like investment banking, digital technology. There is a sustainable global enterprise immersion, and the list goes on. But that's really designed to, once again, immerse you into your particular career path, but also prepare you for that summer internship, especially thinking about those career switchers out there. I also, yep.
Just curious on that point. Are there a lot of career switchers coming to Cornell? And then what are like the most popular pathways that you see people going down here?
Yeah.
Ones.
So yeah, I think it's normal to see career switchers, and we do. I think it varies from year to year, but we do see a lot of career switchers, and I think as candidates go through the process, I think that is okay. You're going to get to business school, and I'm sure you can speak on your experience as well. That you get to business school, there's a lot of options out there, and maybe there's something that you really want to do, let's say in the tech sector, but you never knew that, there might be more of an interest in finance, really focusing on on tech. And, I think what happens is a lot of our students will see those various different opportunities once they come to business school. But one thing that I'm happy to say is that we have a team here that's well equipped to help our students, especially if they're looking to make a career switch.
That's great. Yeah, my path was coming in consulting, big tech, and then entrepreneurship. So I went through many options and many different permutations of what I thought I wanted to be. So I agree. It's such a good environment to explore and see kind of what fits best for you. Yeah. So I kind of digging in more on Cornell. What would you say is something that you think folks should know about Cornell that maybe isn't apparent from the website, kind of the standard kind of things that you might see when you're researching the school?
So over the last few years, we've presented some new opportunities between our program here in Ithaca, but also our Cornell Tech campus as well. So I'm not sure if candidates know about our Cornell Tech campus, but it's really for candidates that are looking to bridge the gap between business as well as the digital economy. And with our program, we offer various different options. We have a new 1+1 program that allows students to do their first full year here in Ithaca, going through the core, going through their immersion experience, a summer internship focusing on tech, and then, of course, that full second year on the Roosevelt Island campus in New York City as well. If you're not looking for a full year of experience, there's a couple other opportunities where you could do a 7-week intensive in two various areas, or we have what we call our fall weekend course, which in your second year, throughout one single weekend, you have the opportunity of going through an experience of some elective courses, some networking, things like that. So I like to highlight, one, just the flexibility, the opportunity to really customize that program, the way that works best for you. And I think that that's one of the highlights that comes to mind. But also another thing, too, that I would say that I don't think you can really find on the website is really kind of the relationships that our students really have with faculty and staff as well. We really talk about that open door policy. And, I really see how our students are able to, really network with our faculty members to really be able to voice their opinions and have that being heard amongst administration. So, those are some of the things that I want candidates to keep in mind. Yes, you're looking for a great education. Yes, you're looking for a great job, but we want to make sure that your 2-year experience is something that is that you walk away extremely helpful or extremely happy with, but also feeling like you're being heard and the opportunity to make change where you feel change is needed.
That's great. Yeah, definitely hearing this kind of community theme coming through a lot with Cornell's, given kind of the things you've been sharing so far. So another area I'm interested to talk about is how Cornell serves and attracts underrepresented backgrounds. This is an area that we take a lot of pride and focus on at Magoosh with kind of our low cost, flexible options for test prep and admission support. So I'm just curious, similarly, how are you serving these communities at Cornell?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we do believe that this is an important part, within our program and our community, making sure that our students have the resources needed. I think first starting off, there's some great partnerships that we have with various organizations like Access, like the consortium, like MLT, and to name others out there, where many of our students have gone through the initial process of these partnerships and of course us guiding students along the way. But of course, once a student starts in the program here at Johnson, those students who have come from these various partnerships are always looking for ways of giving back, whether it's just sharing their stories, whether it is talking to students who are going through the process now of their experience and talking about how Johnson has really helped them, especially coming from some of these underserved populations. But also we have, an Office of Diversity and Inclusion, which is the first Office of Diversity and Inclusion amongst the top MBA program out there, which I believe we're in our 22nd or 23rd year at the moment. But there are many workshops and, of course, when there are, conferences that are happening, there are ways that they are really prepping our students, whether it's interview prep, whether it is, addressing situations that may be happening in the community, whether it is identifying opportunities for leadership, you name it. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion has been a great resource for our students in particular. But then there's also various different affinity clubs and organizations where our students have the support, one from admissions, our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, from leadership as well, that are a good support system for each other, not only from a social side, an academic side, a recruiting side, and just once again, personally as well.
Got you. That's great. So let's move into another area, like getting right into the MBA application itself. Maybe before we get into some of the particular elements, you can kind of highlight kind of just the high level on Cornell, like maybe how many applications you get, the class size, the general process, the things that are part of the application process. And then I wanted to dig in on a couple particular parts of the application.
Right. Okay, great. So for our 2-year MBA class, every year we enroll about around 300 or so in our class every year. And, we get asked all the time, what is the makeup of our class? What does it look like? We have students from, over 40 different countries, from all different backgrounds, more than just business backgrounds, healthcare, engineering, law, you name it, you will see someone in the class. When it comes to our process, our application process in particular, you know, some of the key components that we're looking for is, of course, academic, strong academic, you know, pedigree and background. We look at your professional work experience. We have a goals essay, so we want to know what your short-term and your long-term goals are. There's an impact essay, which the impact essay is something that, you know, kind of going back to what you said about the sense of community. We want to know how you see yourself making an impact in our community here. Your letters of recommendations that we have. You know, we do allow candidates to submit a GMAT or a GRE, or there's a test waiver option as well. There's an optional essay. So looking at, you know, these various different components in the application, and of course, you know, if there's the interview, which is invite only, looking at all these different components helps us really try to identify, one, if this candidate is a good fit for an MBA, but also a good fit for our program in particular.
That's great. Yeah, like you're highlighting, there's so many components to get kind of the full picture of a candidate. Similarly, that's a good thing of like digging in and really understanding how to think about each of these components. So maybe an area that we can start with is the personal, the letter of recommendation. I'm curious how you think about that in terms of maybe mistakes you see people make, advice you would give when it comes to thinking about the letter of recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely. The letter of recommendation, you know, I believe that that's one area where you really need to give it some serious thought on who you feel would write the best letter of recommendation for you. And, you know, when talking with candidates, we do recommend that hopefully it's a direct supervisor, you know, but we also understand that you might not be in the position to let your direct supervisor know. But ultimately, it's someone who can truly highlight who you are as a professional, as a person, and really give us some solid examples of the things that you've done within the workplace, career progression, growth, you know, how you've faced obstacles. And once again, just really being able to give us some tangible examples of really who you are, but ultimately too, how you may be in the MBA setting or coming to our community as well. So, you know, once you've really identified that recommender, I think it's important for a candidate to really just sit down and have a conversation, you know, with that recommender about one, writing you a positive letter of recommendation and really being able to highlight, you know, some of your accomplishments, your achievements along the way. You know, I think when I think about the application as well, you know, there's a lot of different components that we're looking for in the application, but also to the letter of recommendation is usually that one part in the application that holds the application up from actually being completed. So as you're identifying that recommender, make sure that you give them enough time to really be able to provide that recommendation and provide follow-ups with them as well. But you really just want someone who can really highlight you and really be able to show, you know, why you're a good fit and, you know, a lot of your accomplishments along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like something where, you know, you have to be really thoughtful on how you manage that piece because it's not fully in your control. And, you know, I heard you even highlighting that they'll write you a positive recommendation. It sounds like sometimes you're actually getting recommendations that aren't exactly recommendations. So it just shows, you know, how much you want to have a direct conversation about it. So curious.
Oh yeah. Admissions is, I think admissions is a wonderful job. It is amazing we get to see a lot of great things that happen within a candidate's, life's journey or professional experience, you name it. But yeah, the letters of recommendations, I've read some interesting ones along the way, including recommenders who have said, I do not recommend. Now,
Wow. Yeah.
I've seen recommendations that are literally a paragraph long. So as a candidate, yes, I know that you're trusting that recommender to write a strong and, a detailed letter of recommendation. But once again, some of the things that come to mind is make sure that you have the right person. Once again, make sure that you give them enough time. Sit down with them and sometimes it might just be to remind them of some of the accomplishments and achievements, some of the projects that you've worked on, but also let this come directly from your recommender. So we don't want candidates out there writing the letter of recommendation for the recommender, but give them some guidelines or tips to help them throughout this process. And then, of course, from an admission standpoint, we're here as well to help them if they have any questions.
Got it. Okay, let's go into another area, probably the most high pressure moment of the process, which is the interview. It's one of those things where you might be excited because you're like, hey, I got to that step, I got the invite, but then you're like, oh wow, okay, now this is real time, like here we go, moment. So again, like I'm curious to hear what you see are like maybe common mistakes or common things that go wrong with the interview process to start it off, and then any advice that you'd give on this step.
Yeah, absolutely. The interview is probably one of my favorite parts, just to really be able to connect with a candidate. There's times where you look at an application and on paper, it might just be an average application. But when you actually have a conversation with a candidate, you walk away learning so much about that candidate. And then I know your question about some of the mistakes. I think really those candidates that really just don't come prepared. All right. And, whether it is you're interviewing with a bunch of schools, whether it is you're trying to balance out your professional life, personal lives, applications, whatever it may be, to see a candidate that has this opportunity to spend that 30 minutes to really tell their story and not come prepared, can definitely be a disappointment throughout the process. So, really just know your story, do your due diligence as far as why you're looking to get an MBA, why our program in particular, why this is the right time, etc. Other things too that I've seen is candidates really just kind of really over exaggerate their work and in what they're actually doing. What you put in your application as far as that work experience, as far as what the resume says, as far as what your recommender might say, that all should be clear. Even if it talks about the rationale of why you left one role to the next, like make it sure that it's clear, that it's consistent, so that we have a clear understanding of what happened. Other things that come to mind as far as mistakes in particular is just really not knowing the program. I've had candidates come to an interview and say, I'll be honest, I haven't done my research on Johnson. I've seen people say that, they haven't connected with students. And, I think that having a clear understanding of, once again, why an MBA, why our program, is something that is really important. Applying to business school and going through the MBA process, it's a huge investment financially. It's a 2-year investment as well. So we want to know that you've done your due diligence on that in that process to really have an understanding of why this all makes sense and really being able to articulate that to the committee.
Got you. I'm curious at Cornell, who typically conducts the interviews, and then do you go in with maybe some areas on the application that you're looking to learn more about for that candidate? Like how much is it personalized to the applicant versus maybe a standard process that you run through with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So our interviews are conducted by our admissions representatives, as well as our trained second year students, which are called our JAGs. And our JAGs go through an intense process of evaluating. We sit through interviews with them; they sit through interviews with us, and that's how it really. That's who actually conducts the interview in particular. But within our process, what typically happens is, from an admission standpoint, we will do an initial read on the application. We highlight, strengths. We highlight areas of improvement or concerns. And as we're going through our initial write-up, especially if we decide to move forward with an interview, the interviewer will see notes that might indicate, looking for clarity on that 6-month gap in your work experience, or it might indicate, academics. Maybe you come from a competitive school, or and we notice that from one year to the next, grades drop drastically, and maybe you didn't use the optional essay to explain. We might look for clarification there. So your interviewer will have some brief notes that have highlights, but then once again, if there's some specific questions that we want, answered, that will be on there as well.
Got you. Very cool. All right, let's talk about maybe applicants in particular kind of situations, and any advice you might have for them. So let's start with someone with a low undergrad GPA. I know that's something where people feel like, well, what can I do about it? But what advice would you give someone in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a firm believer of being proactive instead of reactive in the process. So if you know that you have a lower undergraduate GPA, one, you can't hide from it. And I believe that it is okay to address that. But the thing is, what are you doing to demonstrate that, one, you're serious, but also that you can truly handle the rigor of the quantitative core of what business school offers? So I would say, one, use an optional essay to briefly explain low GPA. So I've seen many candidates that they were working while going to school. Health reasons, they had to take a break off, military obligations. So use that optional essay to briefly explain, but then also talk about what are you doing now to prepare. So I've seen students who have taken quantitative courses at a local institution. I've seen students who have taken advantage of something like MBA math or online extension courses. There are certifications that candidates may have. But there's still something that we want to see, of course, being that you can't go back to change your undergraduate GPA, but still show some of the things that you have done or are looking to do to really be able to show that you can truly handle the rigor of the core. I've seen students, of course, with the GMAT or the GRE, they've done well there as well. But once again, we're just looking for some type of documentation that truly shows that you can handle the quantitative core.
Yeah, that's a good point, that the more recent kind of test score could help mitigate or help offset maybe the GPA in some circumstances where you could demonstrate that. So curious.
Can I just say just one thing? And once again, that holistic approach is something that is very, that we take very seriously. Candidates always ask, is it a high GMAT that's going to get me in? And there's many candidates that I see with a high GMAT, and that's all they have. The rest of their application it's not strong, where there might be someone who might be average, but outstanding experience, great fit. Recommenders are really raving about them. So, once again, we talk about low GPAs and low test scores. Once again, doesn't mean that you're not qualified for the program. It just means that there are other areas in your application that you really want to strengthen, and really knowing your story. And that's where, going back to the interview process, I think the interview can really help in that way.
Got it. Well, let's talk a little bit about the tests. There's just so many pathways again for students to choose from. We talked about you could do the test waiver, you can do GRE, you can do GMAT. Both those exams have new formats coming out. The short GRE, the GMAT Focus Edition. Just curious to hear, I guess, first, if any preferences or ways you all look at these, and then maybe any trends that you're seeing, like are more people doing GRE, or more people doing the waiver? Just help bring it to life for people as they're making their own decisions on what others are doing.
Right, absolutely. So as far as preference for us, it doesn't. We don't have a preference on GMAT or GRE if you decide to take the test in particular. So I would say, though, whether you're looking at a GMAT, GRE, or even a waiver, really kind of dig deep into what each test really consists of, and knowing what your strengths are to really make a determining factor of how you plan to move forward in that process. If you're looking at the waiver, I would say, one, the waiver is not for everyone. And there are some candidates out there where we're going to highly recommend that you take the test. Because once again, there are areas where we're unsure of what the strength of your quantitative ability may be. You might be a liberal arts major, didn't take any quantitative courses, and maybe you're looking to go into investment banking. We have a very competitive applicant pool out there. And once again, we have to have full confidence that you're going to come into the program and do well. So, this is where you really need to think about, where does it make sense for you to actually take the test versus ask for a waiver. Trends that we're seeing, I would say that over the years we've seen more students taking the GRE, and I would still say that the majority of our applicant pool, the majority of our incoming class has submitted a test, whether it is the GMAT or the GRE. But also, too, we know that the challenges that people have faced over the last couple of years, between COVID, between tech layoffs, and all the various layoffs that are happening out there, we're starting to see a little bit more asking for waivers. But once again, still the majority submitting a test.
Got you. Any advice on GRE versus GMAT for folks on deciding, or think maybe trends you see of who does GRE versus GMAT?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, it's really kind of changed. I feel like those who have, and of course, this is, I'm sure, different amongst schools. I feel like those who are looking to go more of, the financial sector, investment banking route, typically may take a GMAT. I see more probably coming from the social sciences. Those who are doing dual degrees may be looking at more of a GRE. But once again, what I would do is really look at both tests, maybe even take both tests if you can. But looking at kind of what your personal strengths are. Whether it is from a quantitative side, whether it is from the verbal side of things, and kind of really identifying which tests make sense to you.
Got it. I am curious too on there's quantitative, there's the verbal, sometimes there's writing. You kind of look at it holistically? Do you weigh one side more than the other, or how do you look at that when you're breaking down the score?
Yeah, so I think it also really depends on the candidate.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends on the candidate, because everyone's background is so different. And, at the end of the day, what we are looking at is the overall score, the holistic score. Once again, the quantitative side is very important. I think from the verbal side in particular, we may emphasize more depending on what your background looks like, your major. For international students where maybe English is not your native language. If I see someone coming from a competitive school with a strong quantitative background, the quant section might not be as important as other components of the overall application itself. So it's hard to really say, because once again, everyone's background is so different. But once again, it's important for everyone to know that a GMAT and GRE doesn't necessarily make or break a decision. That's why that holistic approach is so important to us.
Got you. Yeah, what I'm hearing is it can help answer kind of open questions based on your educational or professional background, that if you have a strong score in something, you're like, all right, this helps validate that open question we might have.
Yep.
Got it. All right, so let's go a step further into the application process. This is more kind of just less about the individual components and more just kind of getting a peek into what happens once the student hits submit and it goes in. And you talked a little bit about this, of that you do the write-up and all, but curious to hear a bit more of just kind of what's all involved, like how many people, how much time, give us a rough sense of what are all the steps that happen once a student hits submit.
Yeah. All right. Well, bear with me on this one. So once you've actually hit submit, your application will go to one of our admissions and application coordinators. Well, they'll make sure that they have all the required documents that we've requested. And once they have indicated that they have all documents, it will then be kind of flipped over in our system and assigned to an individual reader on our team. And readers consist of our assistant directors, associate directors, our directors, and some of our admissions officers, seasonal readers as well. I would say that, we spend a lot of time on each application, going through the ins and the outs of, your essays, your academics. And as I had mentioned before, as that person does that initial review on your application, they are doing a full write-up of, once again, the strengths, the areas of improvements, concerns that they may have as well. Once that initial review is done by that admissions representative, if they know that they want to move you forward for an interview, you're automatically moved forward to an interview. If it's someone that wants to recommend that you're flat out denied or placed on the wait list without an interview, it will then come back to our committee. There's approximately about 6 or 7 of us on the committee that meets weekly to really discuss. So as a group, we will look at those, that initial review, that full write-up, as far as why they're recommending for the wait list or a deny right off the bat. Once someone has been invited to an interview, the candidate will then receive a notification stating that, hey, we would like to invite you to interview. You have the opportunity of either coming on campus or interviewing through Zoom. Once you go through that interview process with either an admissions representative or one of our JAGs, they will do a full write-up as far as your interview as well, and also can put a recommendation as far as their final recommendation on a decision. Once the interview has been completed, it then comes back to committee once again, and the committee will review your full application inside out as far as what the interviewer has said and putting their recommendations forth. But as a committee, we will then make a final decision as far as how we would like to proceed, whether it is a denial after the interview, a wait list after the interview, or hopefully an offer of admission in our process. So once you've hopefully received an offer, we like to make personal phone calls to congratulate you on that offer. Of course, if it's a wait list or deny, you'll receive a notification through the portal stating that the status of your application has changed, but also gives you some of the next steps to take.
Do you do any of those phone calls?
I
Those
do.
must
Absolutely.
be fun. I'm curious
Oh,
if any of them are especially memorable at
oh.
all.
You know what? Yes, absolutely. And I actually tell this story about, so the calls, the interviews, personal interaction for me is something that I absolutely love the most. But one of my most memorable phone calls was to a teacher, so an educator. And I want to say that she was a teacher within the middle school. And I called, and it's very quiet. And I'm just like, "Hey, Eddie Asbie here. Congratulations on admissions to the 2-year program." And in the background, the whole class erupts.
Oh, wow.
So I believe, and I know that she must have put this this call on speakerphone, as far as the outcome. And you can hear the tears, the joy, but also what I feel from that experience is it was a great learning opportunity for the students as well about furthering their education, and what that experience looks like. So that's one of those calls that I say, well, I'll never forget.
Great.
Being that she shared that moment with her class, even
And
at a younger age.
yeah, and this is definitely a special touch doing the phone call and hearing from someone like yourself. So that's a great touch for that moment. I'm
Absolutely.
sure she'll
Yes.
remember that forever too. Yeah. So okay, very cool, and I appreciate you going through that in detail. So I guess one of the areas I'm curious about is particularly for the waitlist folks. So you talked about you could get waitlisted before the interview, potentially after the interview. I'm curious, yeah, any advice you'd give to those folks, or just generally any sense of like how that process works? Like you're on the wait list now, what happens? Again, kind of lifting the veil a bit and getting a sense of what goes on then.
Yeah, absolutely. So once a candidate's placed on the wait list, we send them an email and outline some general tips as far as navigating our waitlist process. But also there are waitlist webinars that we have. The first thing that I would say though is for a candidate is to really do some self-reflecting as far as why you feel you may have been placed on the wait list. There's a lot of candidates that will come back and just say, all right, you know what? I know that, my goals are something that needed to be fleshed out. Some candidates will also know that, hey, I just did not do the best in that interview. As I mentioned, when we have candidates who say, I don't know anything about Johnson and I haven't done my research, they might realize that, I need to go back and really do my due diligence in that area. Or, once again, maybe it's from the academic side, we're just not sure yet.
Yeah.
So I think, for those who are, once again, self-aware and can really be proactive in this process is something that we want you to start off by doing initially. Really just thinking about ways to improve your candidacy since you've also, hit submit. There are a lot of times where candidates will put together an action plan of the things that they plan on doing, or providing updates as far as new initiatives within the workplace or promotions that they may have, and really being able to show kind of that growth, and also once again how serious they are about being here is something that you can do on the wait list. Know that when I look at the wait list, I'm really looking for someone who really wants to be here, but then also, once again, who has taken initiative to really improve their candidacy since they've submitted their application. So as I think about the wait list right now, there are people who have really gone above and beyond.
Yeah. The
Uh,
wait list is not the right word in that you shouldn't just be just waiting around. Like
yeah.
uh, step
you
up.
you do. You have to put in some work, in this process, and really be an advocate for yourself, and know that members of our community, whether it is students, alums, faculty, even in committee, we meet in committee, and in committee, we are fighting for candidates back and forth. We agree to disagree, but
Yeah.
that shows that you've done something right in this process to really be an advocate for yourself. And, we really hope that while on the wait list that you continue to do that, because once again, we are looking for the ones that really want to be here.
Gotcha. A couple other questions that I think could help lift the veil a bit, if you're able to share, is what it means to be in each step. So let's say the interview, you get the interview. Can you say roughly what percentage end up getting an offer once they're at that stage?
Yeah, so that's a real tough question to answer, because every year it's so different.
Okay.
I think a lot of it really depends on what yield looks like, and selectivity. There are some years where I would say 40% of the applicant pool may receive an interview, and out of that 40%, 50-60% of them get an offer. And over the last couple of years, especially if you've been following what's been happening in the MBA space, the applicant volume, whether their schools have seen an increase in applications or a decrease in applications, it really varies. So it's really kind of hard to kind of give you solid numbers on that, because I'm sure if I go back throughout the years, those numbers are, and I know some of those numbers are going to be very drastic.
Gotcha. Well, maybe similar answer, but just curious, the wait list side, is it like, again, it's kind of this framing of like, is it, it's very unlikely you're going to get off the wait list, or is there anything you could share, maybe a range of like, no, actually a decent number do? Just curious.
Right. So once again, that's going to vary year to year. If I look at, last year's class in particular, we were going to the wait list quite frequently. Quite frequently, and taking people off. If I look at the year before that, we barely went to the wait list at all, because we got to, let's say, May 1st, and we were in a really good position to close our class. So throughout my time here at Johnson, as I approach almost 11 years here, every year has been so different. Of course, it is never ideal for us to leave people on the wait list for a long period of time. But also, we have target numbers. We have to get to what we're looking for with our class size and profiles as well. So, so once again, those are just two questions that are really tough to.
Yeah, and the economy and just general kind of waves here. Like, you're right, it would change things so much that I can see how it's almost like you have to think in those terms first, and then you could kind of assess what each step means. So that's great. Okay, let's go into a game.
Okay.
We're gonna do a fact versus fiction. I'm gonna share a few statements, and then you tell me, whether it's real, whether it's not, and then any elaboration.
Okay.
So these are things that we commonly hear, common beliefs, I would say. Okay, here's the first one. You have the best chance of getting in if you apply in round one. Fact or fiction? Fiction.
Yes.
Okay.
And so you have to. Yeah, that's every year. Our applicant pool is so different. All right.
Yeah.
And there are times where we have put someone on the wait list because we want to see what round two looks like, et cetera. So, once again, I think a lot of it really depends on what the volume looks like for the round. The quality is, and once again, I think quality is key word, the quality of those that are applying in round one. Of course, if the quality is there, we don't want to miss out on an opportunity for you to be admitted into the program. But just because you apply round one, I don't think that that you have a better shot of round one versus round two. So I can speak for Johnson. Other schools might feel a different way, but yes, that's my thoughts on it.
Got it. Okay. Here, kind of similar thing about timing, but this one around scholarships. So you won't get any scholarships unless you apply in round one or round two. Fact or fiction?
Oh, man. Is there like an in-between answer on that one?
Truthy, falsy.
Yeah. So so once again, it depends. What I will say is, I'm going to go on more of the fact side on that one. So I will say that applying round one, round two, typically, that's where we have spent probably a majority of our scholarship spent. There typically is something left over in our third round, in our round three, our April round or so. But once again, every year it changes. So I tell candidates that I typically will tell a candidate that if you're looking at scholarship, once you get to the later round, there could be little to no funding. So once again, kind of hard to answer that one. But once again, better chances of scholarship, I would say, are in our first couple of rounds.
Got you. Okay. Let me see here.
These questions probably have me sweating more than anything else.
I'm sure Ken will appreciate seeing the admissions director sweating a bit. All right, so here's one that's interesting. So you fact or fiction, you should always write the optional essay or answer optional questions.
Fiction. I think that majority of candidates most likely do not need to use the optional essay. The optional essay is really for things that, you feel or might be a red flag. Once again, it could be, low academics and you have a story and rationale of why. Of course, cover your bases, share that. Gaps in work experience, absolutely. If something happened, tech layoffs that are happening, your position was downsized. Maybe it's just you just had a change of heart. Just cover your bases, because a lot of times, when I will look at your application, your resume, and I see that there's these gaps, or once again something that needs to be explained, the first thing that I do is go to the optional essay to briefly, or to hopefully see that you've explained what that situation may be. But once again, I think for the majority of candidates, the optional essay is not needed.
Okay, that's super helpful. Let's talk about a couple that are maybe more just general about the MBA itself. So fact or fiction, if you don't get into a top 20 school, it's not worth getting an MBA.
Oh, that's fiction. Absolutely. There's a lot of great schools out there. Keep in mind that, an MBA it's more than just, once again, the getting a good job. An MBA really gives you the opportunity to really develop as a leader. And I've really seen a lot of our students truly grow, as a leader. It really helps you expand your networks as well. And whether it's just going through the 2-year experience and really, building, on your networks within your classmates, the alumni base as well. Never know if later on in life, what you thought you wanted to do with your MBA, maybe is something that you did for the first 5-10 years, and maybe you eventually want to change careers later on in life. Just being able to have those networks or something that is very definitely valuable. But I would say, there's a lot of great schools, even above, that might not be in the top 20 that are still amazing schools out there.
Great. All right, and this last one is around the ROI, the return on investment of the MBA. And before I say it, I think it's mostly in context of, there's so many changes going on in the world and the economy. So I think there's this sense of like, where does the MBA fit in? Is the ROI going up? Is it going down? Is it like, how is it valued in today's world or ever evolving world? So here's the specific statement to respond to. Fact or fiction, the MBA ROI is not as strong in a digital economy.
Repeat that one more time.
The MBA ROI is not as strong in a digital economy, which I interpret as like just this current world, all remote, kind of just maybe move into tech, all the kind of various things that are playing out. Like, is the ROI still as strong today?
I'm going to say that statement is fiction. I believe that the ROI is still there. And I think that, especially in a digital economy, or even just looking at where we've been over the last couple of years, I think that we've realized really what we can actually do, especially even from a digital world. I look at how well our students have done in the recruiting process, what average salaries look like, new opportunities of growth and leadership post MBA, of what they've actually been able to do. And I speak with our Career Management Center, which is a phenomenal team here that really helps our students out. And they're always able to give us some insights of what's happening. And of course, yes, there have been some changes in industries out there, but that doesn't mean that these companies are not hiring and our MBAs are not, being compensated nicely for it. But what I would also say is really connecting with our students about their experience, or even recent alums, or about the value of an MBA. I ask that question all the time when I see, especially an alum, about their experience, and they always talk about what the value of the MBA has been. From a compensation side, absolutely. I don't think anyone is disappointed in that. But also when they are able to kind of see the growth that they've been able to have throughout their career, working for amazing companies as well. And once again, just going back to the networks that they've been able to, make, not only within MBAs and alums at Johnson, but also MBAs and professionals from other programs, from other schools as well. So I think that the ROI is still there. And, I'm always happy to see, the amazing things that our students are doing, here at Johnson.
Awesome. All right. We'll do one last quick game and then we'll wrap it up here. This is rapid fire round. So okay. I find this game incredibly hard. Hopefully you're better at it than me.
All right.
I'll say a phrase and then you'll respond with basically one or two. We'll give you two words on what comes to mind when you hear that phrase.
Okay.
So you ready?
All right. I'm doing my best.
All right. All right. First one. The perfect applicant.
Ambitious and driven.
The feeling of getting accepted into your dream program.
Ecstatic.
The GMAT.
Daunting.
Cornell Johnson.
Remarkable, amazing, dynamic, innovative. List goes on.
We'll give you more words on this. I know you have strong feelings on that one, so that's great.
You want me to keep going on that one?
Just keep listing them out. All right, so we're kind of at the end of our time here. So first of all, thank you so much for everything you shared here, Eddie. I think people got a really good feel for Cornell and just the MBA in general. But was there anything we didn't touch on? Anything that you want to kind of plug or want people to know that we just didn't have a chance to cover today?
Yeah. So a couple things that come to mind, and I think this is something that you asked right in the beginning about our program in particular, and really just within our community. We have a dynamic community, people who really want you to succeed and that are there rooting for you along the way. And that's something that you see throughout your 2 years in our program here. Our program really gives you that flexibility to customize it the way that works best for you. As I mentioned earlier, the opportunity of taking advantage of Cornell Tech, our immersion learning program, and also just the flexibility of really tapping into other programs here at Cornell. So know that it's more than just an MBA focus. If there are opportunities where you're looking to get outside and explore the hotel school, law, engineering, that's something that our program will give you. The other thing that I will say is keep in mind that we love, and when I say we, I'm talking about the admissions team in particular, we love the work that we do, and all we want to do is see you succeed throughout this process. Know that there are members of my team, let alone myself. I'm always willing to jump on a half an hour conversation regarding your candidacy, your profile, but make sure that you reach out to us if there are questions and concerns that you may have about the program or your profile. There's a lot of blogs out there. There's a lot of myths out there, and I can speak only for Johnson and the way that we look at things. But once again, just utilize us and know that we love to have conversations with candidates to hopefully get them into their dream school.
And on that front, what would you say is the best way for applicants to get in touch with you or the admissions committee and just generally connect with?
Yeah, absolutely. A few ways of doing that. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can send me an email. My email is ea356@cornell.edu. You can email our general mailbox, which is mba@johnson.cornell.edu. And also on our website, under our admissions tab, there's all of our contact information along with our photos. But the last plug I'll put in there too is keep in mind, once again, you really want to connect with our students as well. Hear about their experience, what they, their journey and their overall experience and how Johnson is really preparing them. But on our admissions site, there is a Connect with Students tab that shows their photos, a little bit of bio and regarding their background, and then a way to reach out to them as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Eddie. I learned so much from you today, and it was just a pleasure spending this hour with you. To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to GradTalk MBA podcast. You can find us at GradTalk on TikTok. This will be on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you get your podcast. So wherever you're tuning in, you're going to be seeing this on Magoosh. So thanks again for tuning in, and look forward to the next episode. And thank you once again, Eddie.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to GradTalk MBA by Magoosh. If you enjoyed this episode, please like or subscribe this podcast wherever you're listening, and stay tuned for the next episode.